All right, if you're seeing this, you may have seen the teaser video that I posted on Twitter. But just for a quick rundown, what I've done here, I used the spreadsheet, I used the whole concept that the market is open on YouTube used of building Tesla's income statement, going just looking at the past quarter's actual results, and I built a spreadsheet of my own, and I have added some additional estimates as well. So I've got estimates from Andreas Hopf on Twitter. Also, he writes at Seeking Alpha sometimes. Victor Dergunov writes on Seeking Alpha, and Long Term Tips is also a Seeking Alpha writer. So I'm not sure why these cells are remaining highlighted, but they are. But so I used these estimates to kind of bound my own estimates. So Victor Dergunov, I feel like greatly overestimated the total revenue for Tesla. I think what he ultimately did was he included some taxes that Tesla doesn't actually get the revenue from in his estimate. So I think he's a bit of an outlier here. Long-term tips, it's probably a little bit low, maybe not too low. Uh, who knows? The market is open, maybe a tick high. I've been thinking about 7.1 billion myself. Um, I'm just going to go through some of my thinking behind my own estimates here. So I'll go ahead and reveal the Tesla Q podcast estimate. So what I did here is I tried to be a little bit more conservative than Andreas, give him a little bit more revenue, uh, gave him a lot more than long-term tips actually. And on leasing, I tried to be pretty generous. Didn't quite give as much revenue as long-term tips did. Uh, for the automotive leasing margins, I looked at the past few quarters and got the total margin from leasing and saw that it went from about 98 million in quarter one 2019 to 102 million in quarter two 2019 and then 104 million in quarter three. So 115 million is possibly quite generous for the margin they'll get from leasing. I looked at the just the straight up sales, not the leasing, and compared the quarter three margin and came up with a cost of 4.55 billion to give them a little bit of margin improvement. I don't know if they can actually improve their margins from quarter three based on the whatever concessions Panasonic made, but who knows? So on the energy generation and storage front, I tried to be pretty generous. I actually gave them uh, more than all the other, almost all the other estimates. I gave him 420 million. Uh, Victor gave him 420. TMIO gave him 430, so it's not quite that generous. And on the margin side of things, I was probably pretty close to the others. Uh, Services and other, none of the Tesla bulls tried to be too generous there. They assume that Tesla will lose some money on services and other, which is understandable because particularly, well, I don't know if that necessarily goes into the whole goodwill versus warranty issue aspect of things, but maybe uh, that might be the place that shows up the most. But so you can see their cost of services went from 743 million to 667, and then I assumed it would go up just a little bit because of the additional vehicle sales they've made, and got to a gross profit of 1.39 billion. On the overall corporate expenses side of things, Tesla should be able to pull some strings and reduce the R&D costs and the SG&A costs. So I had those both down from quarter three. Maybe they can't do that. Maybe they may have had some employees defer some compensation until quarter four. Who knows? So that might be overly generous to Tesla. Maybe not. I assume they'll try to not have any restructuring costs again in quarter four, similar to quarter three. So their total operating expenses I've got as 895 million. It's a pretty big drop from what they had been running at. It's pretty consistent over quarter one and quarter two, and then dropped substantially in quarter three. And to be conservative, I'm going to assume that they're going to drop it a little bit more. So their overall income from operations, I've got at 495 million. Their interest income, I'm going to assume they'll make a little bit more on interest income based on that large reported cash balance. And I'm actually going to assume that their interest expense goes down a little bit. That's because they most likely made they did pay off their bond, might have been a convertible bond on November 1st. So that was only one month worth of a coupon for that portion of their debt. So I assume that their interest expense will go down a little bit to be conservative again. On their other income, I don't know what strings they're going to pull, but to be safe, I'm going to assume that they're going to find some other income somewhere. Maybe they'll recognize some more of their already received revenue from full self-driving or something. So I'm going to assume they'll pull some revenue there, and it'll go straight to the bottom line. So provision for income taxes, because of their increased profitability, I'm going to assume that that's a little bit higher. So got a total net income of $348.5 million. And unlike some of these other estimates, so Andreas didn't actually use a share count in his estimates. And I'm not sure, forget if Victor or Long-Term Tips did either. So I just have the same share counts for all four of those estimates. But for my estimate, I'm going to assume that their share count is going to increase again, as it historically has, which will dilute things a little bit more. But the bottom line earnings per share estimate for my base case, I've got as $1.92 or $1.88 per share. So just summing up the last four quarters, if you include that, end up with well, my my thing's not working here. So there we go. Negative 365 based on my estimate and the prior three quarters. So with if they do make $1.92 a share this quarter, to go with the 80 cents in quarter three and the $2.31 loss from quarter two, they have about 40 something cents to make up. Yeah, 41 cents. So they could lose up to 40 cents and be ever so slightly profitable for the last 12 quarters if they manage to not lose more than 40 cents in quarter one, assuming that my estimate ends up being in the right ballpark. So part of why I decided to do this exercise was because I happened to see Victor's article on Seeking Alpha and the Long-Term Tips article within the same day. Saw this wide disparity of revenue from two Tesla bulls. So 6.8 billion versus 7.7 billion. That's over $900 million difference. So that really caught my eye. And oddly enough, the guy with the lower total revenue number ended up with the higher income level because he didn't include these other items, particularly interest expense and a provision for income taxes. And Victor seemed to include a very large provision for income taxes, although he didn't specifically call that number out in his article. I had to infer it based on some of his other numbers, but I back calculated that he included a provision of over $100,000 for income taxes, or $100 million, I should say. So just looking at some of these other estimates. So the Tesla bulls were all in this same general ballpark. 338, 381, 445. The 445 had some pretty big errors involved with it. So I would say this 381 is probably a pretty safe cap for what Tesla could actually get by with reporting without raising immense red flags. I could see them maybe improving their total margin just a little bit. assuming that the whatever concessions Panasonic made worked only for quarter three, but also for quarter four. Don't really see much room for them to do much with the generation and storage or services side of things. So really the places where I think they could make the biggest difference are their overall corporate costs. So if they can keep restructuring to nothing and starve R&D and SG&A, which SG&A, if you saw the article, I think about a week ago or sometime within the past week on CNBC, apparently there was some of their sales force had started a petition trying to get more pay for their sales force. Apparently their pay had been dropped substantially in the latter part of 2019. So that would go along with a further drop in the SG&A number. So I've got it going from 596 to 575. That might actually not be conservative enough as far as how much Tesla can drop that number. It's hard to say. 320 million. If they drop SG&A or if they drop R&D much below that, I think Tesla bulls would rightly be concerned when they've got the semi development still ongoing, Model Y development still ongoing, Cybertruck development still ongoing, and should have their Shanghai R&D center up and running at some point. Although with the coronavirus, who knows? I should say I'm recording this on the night of January 26th, 2020. That's Sunday. The actual quarter four financial results are due to come out on Wednesday, the 29th of January 2020, after the market closes. I think the conference call is scheduled for about 6:30 Eastern time. I might be wrong on that. Maybe it's 5:30. But Tesla does seem to report quite a bit later in the day than most companies because they are just that considerate of the analysts and everybody. So I've rambled a lot. I'll be putting up a link to this spreadsheet on the post on Patreon for my subscribers for this video. So if you want to see it, you can become a $1 per month subscriber or more than $1 per month and do that. But you can see the video here and do what I did with the TMIO video and build your own spreadsheet from it if you're so inclined. If you notice, I have a quarter three 2018 thing on here. I may go back and look at as far back as that quarter. I think the quarters before that are probably pretty much irrelevant because quarter three 2018 was their first really big quarter. That was right after they finally hit 5,000 Model 3s produced per week, or at least claimed that as of June 30th, 2018. So the very next day was the start of quarter three 2018. And I will be recording podcast episodes still. I'm not going to go just to video, but I will stop rambling here. Thanks for watching and listening, and goodbye.